Good afternoon. Welcome to our second presentation in our Lunchtime Learning webinar. We are so excited to have you here with us. Today we have a fantastic webinar for pre-award proposal process by Ms. Cynthia Mohammed. I am so excited to have her here. She's with the Office of University Research and a grant management specialist. And so this is your webinar. So we want to make sure that you are asking the questions, getting the information as you need in order for us to make sure that as we move through the proposal writing process, you have all the information you need. So without further ado, Ms. Mohammed, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I recommend that you have view side by side so that you can see Ms. Mohammed as she's speaking.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to briefly discuss the pre-award proposal process here at the University of the District of Columbia. Some of this information is universal, some of it is particular to our institution. This presentation is going to be based on the principal investigator, and we're going to discuss it from the principal investigator standpoint. Okay. The first thing is that you need to develop a research idea. Your research idea should ask a question and seek to answer something that you're looking for the answer to. It should be interesting, relevant, and it should align with the mission of the university. The next step after you decided on what you want to research is you have to locate a funding opportunity. Where is the money? There are a couple of places that you can look for grant funding. Grants.gov is a database that's managed by the federal government, and it contains all of the federal opportunities. Everyone is on board, all the institutions and all the federal agencies. At one point, DOD wasn't on board, but now they are compliant. So every federal agency that's offering grants is located in grants.gov. And we like to thank Dr. McCrary. He helped us to purchase Pivot Research Professional, which is a database of over 80,000 opportunities. It's now live here at the university. Everyone can go in and set up an account, claim your profile, and then you can create funding alerts based on your research, and the system will automatically send you alerts of anything that's available in your area, as well as send you information on your collaborators and people across the country that are doing similar research, so then you can form collaborations. That's easy. Just go set up an account and you'll be able to find plenty of funding opportunities and Pivot. Program announcement. Once you decide on what you're going to research, you'll have a program announcement. And these next three things that we're going to talk about is the difference between a program announcement, a grant guide, and uniform guidance. And it is important that you know the difference. A program announcement explains the information that's in the program that you're applying for. However, in the program announcement, it always says that you are supposed to follow the grant guide of that agency. And sometimes people get confused. The program announcement will always supersede the grant guide. So the grant guide may tell you that you have to do a 5-page bio sketch, but the program announcement may tell you that they only want 3 pages. In that instance, you would follow the program announcement and not the grant guide. And these are different ways that you'll see the initials for program announcement. It's sometimes just PA. If you see FOA, means funding opportunity announcement. RFP, request for proposal, as that should have said. Broad agency announcement is what the Department of Defense likes to use. And these are grants guides. A grant guide is a guide that gives you all of the particular steps of what's needed for a proposal. They're usually 1,000 pages. And they go into very detailed information of how they want the bio sketch formed, how they want every part of the application. You are to follow this when putting together a proposal, except in the instance that the program announcement asks for something different. And so NSF's their grants guide is called the NSF Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, and they're currently in volume 22.1. They usually update that annually. NIH also updates theirs annually, the general instructions for NIH and other PHS agencies. NASA also has one that tells you what and how they want everything done. So in the grants guide, that's where they're going to give you details. The program announcement may just mention that they want a biosketch, but the grants guide is going to tell you exactly what sections they want in the biosketch, and all the information that they expect to put on, they expect you to use. The next guidance that we have is uniform guidance. It's actually called the Office of Management and Budget Guidance for Grants and Agreements. And this is pretty much the law that the federal government has laid on what is acceptable in a grant application, as well as in grant spending. And since it's the federal government, and this is what they're telling us, this is absolutely imperative that we follow what they say. So when you're putting into a proposal, there are certain things that can and cannot go into the budget. There are certain things that you can and cannot do. For example, the federal government does not allow entertainment on their budget. So sometimes you think you want to have a meeting with your staff of your grant, and you figure you can buy some food. You can't do it on federal funds. Has to come out of your personal pocket. And so the uniform guidance is just it's a 1,400 page document that explains all of the ins and outs of grants and agreements according to the federal government, and we are obligated to follow them. They're more important on the post-award side than the pre-award, but we can prevent a lot of post-award mishaps when we make sure that at the pre-award stage, when we put in an application, we put in the right things and that we're compliant on the pre-award end. When you're putting in an application, please make sure you communicate to your dean, to your chair, your dean, your department head, vice president. Discuss with them what you're proposing before you come and discuss it with the Office of Sponsored Programs or the Office of University Research. Make sure that you talk to them so they understand, and discuss if your project has any requests, if you're wanting course release, if it requires cost sharing, if you think you need to buy a bigger piece of equipment, because all of this involves different offices. We need to make sure that everybody knows. So please have a prior discussion with your chair and dean or department head and vice president once you decide and you have selected a program announcement. You should share that program announcement with them so they can look through it and read through it to see that it is in the line in the mission of the university, and that they will give you some insight if they feel it's a good opportunity for you as an investigator. We ask that you submit a notification of intent to submit proposal form, which is found on the OSP website, at least 40 days before your sponsor deadline. We would prefer the largest advance that we could, so 60 days would even be better, because we ask that you not underestimate the time to complete a proposal and the internal routing. I see all too often that a lot of us do. And we want to make sure that you're putting forth the best proposal. So please allot yourself the right amount of time to accomplish that task. This is just what the notification of intent to submit form looks like. And it's also found on OSP's website under forms. Some of the websites require that you register on the sponsor's website in order to get into the website. We need you to do this very early. This should be one of the first things you do once you decide. So this is at the stage that you notified us 40 days in advance, and then you should let us know that you need to register on the website. because it sometimes takes the sponsors, they have to approve you, and then it sends an email to OSP to go into the system and to give you a role and to affiliate you with UDC. And sometimes that can take some time. So we want to make sure that everybody does it early so that we're not waiting. And it holds you up from submitting your grant applications. So do that. That should be one of the first things you do, is making sure that you're registered in the system. So if you're going to submit your grants through grants.gov, you need to register to create an account in grants.gov, and then the Office of Sponsored Programs has to approve you. If you're going to register in research.gov for NSF, then the same thing has to happen. You create an account, we go in and give you a role to approve you. NASA has the same process, DOE has the same process. And so you need to make sure that you can do that, because if you're not registered in the system, you won't be able to submit your grant application. The next thing that we need to do is there's a proposal permission to submit form. And it just gives us some basic information about your proposal, and is used for internal routing purposes. This information never goes to the sponsor. This is information that the university just has to record so we can understand what our research portfolio is at doing and where we're going. So we ask that when you fill out the form, that you provide a budget justification, or one-page project summary or abstract. This document goes through the university and different people touch it. So they just want to see a one-page abstract of what you're proposing. They want to see budget and budget justification. When you turn the form into the Office of Sponsored Programs, it should be signed by the PI, chair or director, the dean or vice president, and any applicable internal offices, and we'll get to that later. The form is then returned to the Office of Sponsored Programs, and then we route it to the vice president of research and the chief academic officer. There's a simultaneous process. You have to work on your internal documents for institutional approval, the permission to submit form, as well as work on your proposal elements for upload to the sponsor's website. So we want to make sure that you understand that and you're doing both things simultaneously. So you have to become multiplicitous in putting in a grant application. This is the proposal permission to submit form. Just complete it out. If you have any questions, you can always ask me about how to submit it and complete it. We have an internal alert notification process. And what happens in this process is that sometimes your research requires that internal units will have to do some work if your grant gets funded. So at the proposal stage, we want to alert these units so that they're not caught off guard when you tell facilities that you just ordered a $250,000 piece of equipment and they got to figure out how to get it into the building. So if you're proposing that you're getting the $250,000 piece of equipment and they see the proposal and you give that to them, then they look at it and they see and they know that that's what you're proposing, and then they can make notes of it so they can contact us and keep up with us on where you are in getting the funding, so that you don't have to wait when you get funded to buy the equipment. And a lot of things are already taken care of in advance on where the equipment is going, what kind of electricity and other needs that it has. And all of that happens before you get funded, so that it doesn't slow up your research. So the internal alert notification process is very important. So if you put personnel on the grant, you will always have to contact the Office of Human Resources. They're the ones that's going to look to make sure that the salaries that you state are accurate for the people who are already employees, and that they meet the requirement of the position titles that you use for employees that you plan to hire. So this stage is very important. So on the permission to submit form, if you propose any of these things in your project, you simply would need to get the internal offices to sign the routing form before turning it into the Office of Sponsored Programs. Read the funding opportunity. I can't say this enough. You have to read the funding opportunity. The funding opportunity, as we stated, tells you everything that they want you to do. It defines the project. So if you look at what you want to do, you have to make sure that the funding opportunity matches what you're researching. Don't ever try to make your research fit the funding opportunity. That's a mistake. And when it goes up for review, the reviewers can see that that happened. So we'd like to, when you choose a funding opportunity that's of interest to you, that you make sure that your project and what you're doing matches the opportunity. You can always talk to the program officer prior to submitting your grant application. You can send them a white paper to say, this is my idea, does this fit your program? And they'll give you some good feedback. They're there to be your advocate, not your enemy. So they are very helpful in providing information and data and to lead you, have a discussion with you about what application to pursue. Now, sometimes the application that the funding opportunity that you went after may not be the one, but they're very good at saying this one is a better fit because they know all the various programs. So remember, your program officer is your friend. Start building your proposal according to sponsor guidelines. So this is an example of a page of one of the sponsors, had a lot of stuff that they wanted done very particularly, and how they were uploaded and what things were uploaded where in the grants.gov application. Be very careful. In my life as a pre-award person, I've seen many investigators get their grants thrown out simply because they uploaded a document in the wrong place. So we want to avoid that. We don't want that to happen to you. So make sure you read the instructions and you understand. And if there's questions, please ask us. I've worked with the federal government enough to know their ambiguous language and what they really mean and not what someone may interpret it to say. So please ask us. We're here to help you. The proposals have two parts. The technical section, that's what you're researching. Then it has the administrative section. We ask that you not take the administrative section for granted. It's a very important part of your application. That's when they look at your bio sketch to see if you and your investigators that are being proposed on the application have the qualifications to do what you're asking. They look at your current and pending support to see that you have adequate time to present the project. They look at your facilities and other resources. What does UDC have and how can they assist this professor in their research? They also look for a postdoctoral mentoring plan and a distribution plan. So this section, don't take it for granted. Do not take the administrative part of the grant for granted. Because some of these components not completed well, no matter how well written your technical section is, can cause your grant to get thrown out and not reviewed. If your proposal requires a letter of support, we ask out of respect for our leadership that has to sign those letters, that you ask them at least 15 days in advance of the sponsor deadline, because in their busy schedules, they might not get to it if you give them less than 15 days. And we want to make sure that you have all of the elements for your grant application. These are just the elements of a proposal. Every proposal will have these elements. It's always going to ask you for a cover page. That's the information that typically OSP fills out because it's the base information for the university, which has our information, all of our ID numbers, our EIN, and all of the various information. Proposals typically ask for a project abstract or a project summary. They should be written in layman's terms, not in scientific terms. The federal government will publish all of the abstracts so the general population of the United States can actually read and see where government funding is going. So the project abstract and project summary should always be written in layman's terms. There's always a table of content, and your project description is your technical plan. And that's where most of you spend most of your time. I need you to spend more time on the administrative components, which is your review of literature, your biographical sketch, current and pending support, your facilities, equipment, and other resources, your dissemination plan, and your evaluation plan. and supplementary materials if you're proposing to hire postdoc mentoring plan, your budget justification. These are very important. I know you spend a lot of time on your project descriptions and trying to get that correct, and I cannot stress enough, do not forget to give your time to the administrative components of your application. They absolutely matter. When you develop your budget, make sure that it's reasonable, allocable, and allowable, and that it makes sense to the uniform guidance, which we discussed earlier. You should also develop your budget in accordance with the university's and the sponsor's guideline. Your budget should clearly align with your research project. So if you put in your technical part that you're going to have 3 people that's going to do a certain task, your budget should show those 3 people. So you want to make sure that they both align with each other so it makes sense to the reviewers and that the budget it's directly related to what you're proposing. The government hates rounded numbers, so get out of the habit of putting rounded numbers on your grant application. If you're buying a piece of equipment, nobody's giving you a piece of equipment for $5,000. Usually it's $5,321.17. And that's what they want to see on the budget and on the application, because it lets them know that that's a real number and that you're simply not just padding the budget and asking for dollars. Helpful places that you can use to get your budget numbers is you can do online pricing. You can actually get actual quotes from the vendors. You can go to brick and mortar stores and see what things cost. And the U.S. General Administration has a website that if you're doing travel, because all federal government employees have per diems for everything. And so it's a really cool website that you can go to, and it gives you put in where you want to go and the dates you want to travel. And they've already calculated and estimated what the hotels will be around that time, as well as what the airfare. So you can always use those as good numbers that's on your proposal, instead of just arbitrarily choosing $300 and saying you're going to California from Washington, D.C., and you are never going to buy a $300 ticket from Washington, D.C. to any parts of California. So make sure that you use the resources available so that your budget contains estimates and real numbers. Okay, these are the elements that you need to put on the budget. Always personnel, then the fringe benefits, equipment, travel, participant support costs, and then other direct costs, and the facilities and administrative or indirect costs. Reread the funding opportunity. I really can't express that enough. Read the funding opportunity. Even though you've read it once, read it again. You'll reread it and find there are things that you missed, and it might cause you to have to revise some of your technical portion. And we always want to make sure that you're putting out the best application ever. So we ask that you constantly reread the funding opportunity. Okay, as you are routing your proposal with the proposal permission form internally, you should be uploading, because this is a simultaneous action, you should be uploading your proposal and the proposal elements into the system that the grant would be submitted in. So it has to be an absolute simultaneous process. Once you've uploaded your grant application, please notify the Office of Sponsor Programs. And we will go in and we would do a compliance review, because we too read those funding opportunities and we read them thoroughly, and we'll make sure that your proposal is in compliance to the sponsor's requirements and that it meets all of the requirements of the institution. If there's anything that we see that is non-compliant, we will send you a notification to make the change and show you where in the program announcement or the grant guide or the uniform guidance where that change needs to be made. And our changes will always come from those documents. We never will personally ask you to change on our preference. Anytime we ask you to change, it will be based on our understanding of the program announcement, the grant guidance of that sponsor, or the uniform guidance of the federal government. From there, we will route the proposal for institutional approval from the Vice President of Research and the Chief Academic Officer. We will submit the proposal. You would have to go into the system as the principal investigator to give us the option to submit the proposal when you are satisfied, or with a lot of you are, when you're at the point where you think you just need to get away from it. When UDC is the subaward, the process remains the same. So when the subaward asks you for your bio sketch and all your administrative parts and your budget and everything, that still gets submitted to us, and we submit it to the subaward institution that you're collaborating with. Your grant gets submitted and you wait for the proposal review. It typically takes 6 to 9 months. It is a peer review process. All applications have a place where you can say who you don't want to review your application, because sometimes you collaborated with someone and their research is just too closely related to yours and you don't really want them to review the proposal. You can always state that actually in the proposal to make sure that there's no conflict of interest for when your grant application gets reviewed. So we know that's a long time to wait. Sometimes it can be longer than 9 months, but the agencies always keep up with you, letting you know where they are in the process. So from the time you submit your grant application, it goes into the system and it gives you multiple notifications that they received it. Then it gives notification that it does compliance checks. One of the compliance checks is that the system does an auto check. If they ask for certain elements of the application, then what the system would do is to make sure there's a document uploaded in that place, and it lets you know. If they ask for a half-page document, the system is sophisticated enough that if you've written a full page, it can let you know that you've entered too much data, and all of that information will bounce back, and we have the opportunity to resubmit with corrections. The issue with that is it always has to happen before the deadline. So if you decide to submit the first time and you're submitting at 4:59 for a grant that's due at 5 p.m. and it comes back to us that there's a correction, you won't be able to make the correction. So we do ask that you not put yourself in that position and that you submit the grant the day before it's due. So if the system gives you a kickback on something they need you to correct, you have an opportunity to correct it and still submit the application. And we just ask that you repeat the process. And that is the process of our pre-award proposal process. And while you're waiting on getting funded, you can start familiarizing yourself with some of the post-award requirements. You should step out there like you're going to get this grant and start familiarizing yourself with all of the things that need to happen on the post-award, like the spending plan, procurement, requisitions, purchase, P-card. If you requested course release, try to get that in place and learn what you need to do. So once the grant gets funded, that happens, and you're not behind in your research, and you don't end up teaching a course because it didn't get released because things didn't happen in the right time. This information is borrowed from the University of District of Columbia Handbook for Principal Investigators. If you have any questions, you can contact our office. Do we have any questions today?
Okay, Ms. Muhammad, if you want to stop sharing, then I'll open it up to all the participants.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to say that was super, super informative. And I hope that the people who are on the call, there were several things that Ms. Muhammad talked about that you really, really, really need to pay attention. So I have the first question and then I'll open it up to others. All right, so there were two documents. One had 1,000 pages and the other one had 1,400 pages. All
Yes,
right. I don't know about you, but I know most people don't want to read that in its entirety. So, and I'm not trying to belittle that. Are there little
yes,
cliff notes that people who really need to know certain sections of it
yes.
really need to read it? I'm not saying they shouldn't read the whole document, but
Okay.
we all are human. And so we know that reading is
Okay.
not always fundamental.
Yes, this is the beauty of the situation. We, as OSP, have read the documents in their entirety. So we'll know based on your grant application, which sections, and that's why I said, whenever I ask somebody to make a correction on a grant, I'm always going to pull it out of those documents to show you that it's not Cynthia that's asking for this change. It's the program announcement, or it's the grant guide, or it's uniform guidance, and I'll pull it out. But yes, I know the documents. We know the documents well. So when we don't expect the faculty members to read the documents, and so we give them that information, and then we'll always point out and use them as reference points of when there's questions that come up on the grant application.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions. This is your chance. Ms. Muhammad gave you a super thorough, comprehensive presentation, but this is the time to ask any specific question that you may have. And just take yourself off mute. Dr. McCrary?
Well, thank you, Dr. Reed. First of all, I want to thank Cynthia Muhammad. Excellent job. Again, I appreciate what you have done and what you're showing for the rest of our campus. I think everybody, as you know, this will be posted on our website, but it is a real concise way to find it. So Cynthia, I just applaud you. Thank you very much. I mean, this is just really concise. And I would say to all the faculty members, the process has been accurately described. The federal rules do change constantly. For example, things like research security, okay, and what the federal government wants. And that's how we have to work with you. And so I would always just want to second Ms. Muhammad's call. Early is better. And if you come to us, we can find the information. This year, the Office of Science and Technology Policy is now looking at what they call controlled unclassified information. They're concerned about research security, and there are new requirements. In fact, every faculty member, probably starting within the next year, who wants to apply for any agency will have to do another registration, which is more, I know it seems like more administrative burden, but what I say to you is engage the folks in the Office of University Research and sponsored programs very early on. And in some cases, don't even wait until there's a proposal announcement. If you just have questions about pre-award, how to put a proposal together, where are resources, we're always there to help you. And again, Cynthia, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Sure.
So I have a couple more questions. All right, so we talked about early, but again, I'm not being a naysayer, but sometimes people don't always follow that as a rule. So what are some of the main things you see that people do that you would really like to make sure that we avoid that as we go forward?
Okay, as I stated, a lot of times the faculty members get so immersed in their technical proportion that they forget the administrative components. And then they don't allot enough time to put them together according to the regulations. And that's problematic because the agencies, when they ask for your biographical sketch, it asks for certain things, and they want those certain things, and they want to know about you. NSF likes to have the listing. This is a small thing, but this irritates the reviewers, and it's very small. When you do your listing of where you are, you're supposed to do it reverse chronologic. So they want where you are now at the top and where you started at the bottom, because when they look at it, that's what they want to see first. What are you doing now? What did you used to do? And so sometimes when the faculty members are putting that together, they don't pay attention to that. And I know from reviewers that annoys them, because if they're looking at your list of histories of what you did and it's backwards, they're going to get a distorted view of who you are. Because one thing is they don't read everything. So they might not get down to the bottom, which is where it should have been at the top. They're going to read and look and see, oh, he doesn't have a lot of experience, instead of it should be the other way around. Your top things and what you're doing currently should be at the top, and then the things that you did in the past at the bottom. And so I always ask people to make sure that you're reading that. It's a simple request that a lot of people actually, they don't think it's that important, but it is very important, because reviewers look at that and they're briefing things because they have a lot of proposals to review. And so you have to make sure that the administrative components, they meet the guidelines, because little things about putting something in chronological order when it's asked for reverse will annoy the reviewers.
Thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to open it up. Any questions that you would like to have, any reinforcement of what you already know? Okay. Well-
Dr. Ali Pori Fanid had his hand up.
Okay.
Okay.
I saw clapping.
Oh, I thought he had a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't have any questions at this moment. Thank you very much for the great presentation.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So I am going to thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for this exceptional presentation. Dr. McCurry?
Just one final comment for faculty members who want to learn more about the proposal in developing proposals. NSF and many of the other agencies are always looking for reviewers to review proposals. And this is a great way to kind of learn, as I like to say, the game. Because the thing that Ms. Muhammad just talked about reviewers getting irked because things are not in reverse chronological order. You get to see the insights of that, and then you can take that knowledge back and not only help you with your proposals, but it could also help, you can share that information with your colleagues. And particularly, it's a good time to do it because NSF, for right now, and many of the agencies have been asked to further include HBCUs in particular because of the low funding stream to HBCUs for other reasons. And so it's a good time. And if you are interested, please contact me personally and say, look, I'd be interested to working on a review panel. It's a great opportunity to learn. It's also a great opportunity to meet other colleagues across other institutions in your field. But finally, it really familiarizes you with the review process, because in many cases, all of you are extremely creative, innovative, and you're writing a good proposal. But how the proposals get funded in some ways are very, very subjective. And this exposes you to the process. So if you're interested in being a reviewer, whether it's for NSF, NASA, or NIH, please contact me directly and let me know. And again, Cynthia, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you. There's a comment from William in the chat. I guess he's a humanities professor. And he posted an opportunity that he says the digital humanities people want to apply for. We're excited with the opportunity. I'll take a look at the program announcement, and if you all could just get in contact with me, we can move you all along on actually applying for the grants.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to thank you all so very much for coming to our presentation today. Ms. Muhammad, I cannot begin to express how comprehensive and informative that was. I'm going to stop the recording.